Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and we're going to create a little card. So I've got a piece of Pink Frog smooth card, super smooth, 300 GSM, 4.5 inches by 6.5 inches. And I'm going to begin by using the word timeless from my clematis set. Excuse me. There's something about I always decide to cough or sneeze whenever I start a video. So I'm going to take the word timeless. I'm going to take my Nocturne ink. So I'll take that word timeless. Where shall I place this? Around about here. There we go. And we're going to stamp this once again. Just all the way across ish, just so that we've got timeless running along here. Now I've got 3 of those words. No, we'll leave it at that. I was just going to stamp it again, but no, we're going to leave it at that. I'm then going to take my Abutilon stamp set that's got this floral on, and it's got the Abutilon and the smaller one and a couple of the wordings as well. So I'm going to take the small Abutilon, and my desk is in such a mess. And you know, I've got a bite underneath my watch and it's itching like mad. Right. Where did I put the... I was going to say, where did I put the clematis stamp set, so I can just place this back. Oops. Try not to nudge the camera, Tracy. Just check that's now still. Yes, it is. So I'm going to take the small Abutilon and then I'm going to ink that with my black VersaFine Clair, and I'm sort of going to add this so it looks like it dangles from the timeless wording. And it's only a small stamp, so it doesn't need too much, she says, although I just missed that line a little bit. Let's just add that in. That'll teach me. So we'll then take the same stamp and we're going to, I'm just deciding what I want to do first. So again, we'll add it from here. Again, just give it a couple of seconds just to grab hold of the surface. So we're just going to create a little card just to showcase that the small elements can pack a punch as well, and they work beautifully. Again, let's have this from there. There we go. So you can see we're just building up just so that they dangle from the timeless. And whilst we are doing this, the ink is drying. So I can add this from here. And if your little branch doesn't quite touch, don't worry, you can draw that in. go. And you just have to think about your composition. And I do want some sort of coming off the edge. Just makes it a little bit more pleasing to the eye. And we are going to add some colour to this as well. I don't want an even number. I would like an odd number, if at all possible. And you too can spend ages deciding where something's going. And I'm always talking about how the stamps work together. I like that, so it's got an odd number. And then, so we'll just remove the little Abutilon. I think I'm going to use the bird from New Beginnings. So maybe the bird from New Beginnings, because it's just a little bit smaller. So we'll use the bird from the New Beginnings stamp set. And we'll add this here, down here. And again, this card is absorbent, so just give that a few seconds for the Nocturne ink to absorb into the card. Again, we'll just give my fingers a clean. And then I'm going to use the little hearts from my Quirky Birds. So let's take those little tiny hearts. Make sure they're on there. Just add a little bit of black ink. Just down here. There we go. So at the moment I'm just sort of creating the composition. Just add our little string from the bird. We'll then add, let's just grab some water first, because my pen's probably got purple or something on it. We just need a clean piece of kitchen roll. I always have a piece of kitchen roll just in case I use a little bit too much water. And we just want to just ground our little bird a little bit, just so he's not floating in midair. We don't want a floating bird, so we've just got that subtle touch of grey. You can add a little bit more if you wish. You can easily go in and just add a little bit more, just so that it's more obvious. There we go. And then I'm going to add some colour to my florals once I've added a little bit of shading under the Timeless. let's just add a little bit of shading under the Timeless. So you're adding quite a bit of shading under there, just so that that stands out. So you're adding quite a bit of shading, doesn't matter if you go over the words a little bit. And then I want my Ecoline pens, which at the moment I just seem to be pulling out Ecoline pens and not putting them back. I'll worry about that afterwards. And shall we use some blues? Where are the colours? Where are the colours? So we've got turquoise blue and Prussian blue. We'll just place them on the floor. I really should tidy some of the pens away, but I haven't. Let me just clear that away and we'll work on an acrylic block, because then we won't get in too much of a mess. So what I'm going to do, where are my, I'm going to add a touch of colour to the Butylons. And do you know, I've got no copier paper here, so let's just use a scrap. And I don't think that's a scrap of card. That's better. Just use a scrap of card so we don't lean on the bird. So I'm going to use bronze green. And if you work whilst the pens, oh crikey, are wet, one of my pens is really stiff. If you work while the pens are wet, you can actually blend pen to pen. But you need to work whilst that ink is wet. So for the top area of the Butylon, the colouring is very simple. Touch of green just in this top area, maybe a little bit to the bud, just a tiny bit of green. So let's add, and it's really helpful if I actually tell you the colours that I'm using, just to give information. So this is Spring Green 655 and this is Bronze Green 657. Does help, doesn't it, if I tell you that? So a little bit of that darker green, and then because it's a small area, we'll just blend pen to pen. You can blend these with water as long as you've got the right card. But when I'm just colouring a small area, whilst the pen is still wet, I'll just use the lighter colour just to blend out those lines. So we're just adding the touches of green first. So let's add a little bit of green just to the tip of the bud. There we go. Now we know we've done them, so we can place those lids on. And then I'm going to use Turquoise Blue 522 and Prussian Blue 508. And I'm just going to, once again, blend pen to pen. So I'm going to add a touch of that dark blue just around sort of the top part, and then with my turquoise blue, whilst the pen is still wet, and just blend that. Now, because it's such a strong colour, I'm going to use a touch of water and just pick up a sort of a watered down version of that turquoise blue, just to blend out the edges, just to make it a little bit lighter, and just blend that out. So again, we'll use the Prussian blue, and then we'll blend the edges of that with the turquoise blue, and then just use a little bit of a wash of the same colour and just blend that out just a little bit lighter. If I lift this up just so that you can see a little bit more. So then we'll repeat the process. Lovely way to blend, lovely and simple. Nothing too complicated. So you're just creating a wash of the same colour, just so that that comes out a little bit lighter. And I'm just doing one at a time, because if I work whilst the ink is wet, my lighter colour pen will sort of blend out the darker colour because it is still wet. There's no point trying to do that when the ink is dry. That won't work at all. So we've still got some colour on there, a little bit of that water, and then just blend that out with a wash of the same colour. And you can just keep adding until you're happy with the wash of colour. There we go. Then blend. There we go. Then pick up the wash and just blend that out. And it's wonderful because they're very juicy, so you hardly have to do anything at all, and you get that lovely. So obviously Tracy decided she wasn't going to do the buds for some reason, so you only have to touch the buds just with a little touch of that Ecoline pen. Go. And you can just blend out the edges just so that you don't have any harsh edges. There we go. And if you want to just add a touch of the lighter colour to the buds, you can. It doesn't really need much. I can just clean that up off my acrylic block. Let me just lift this up. Obviously we have touches of white that we need to add to our design, but let's make that so that it's got a little bit more shading. So I'm now going to just, where are we? Clean my brush, because it will have that blue ink on there. So let's just make sure again. Obviously if you've got a jar of water, that will work quite nicely. So I'm then going to take my Distress Oxide ink. The time goes so quickly when you are enjoying yourself. So I'm going to take the oxide ink. Now obviously, let's just grab this card. This is reactive to water. So what you want is a little bit of kitchen roll. just so that you can add some colour of the grey around your Abutilon without affecting the blue too much. It's easier to turn your card. That's the easiest way to work rather than trying to turn your hand. And we're just going to add a little bit of this grey around our Abutilon florals, and this is Hickory Smoke that I'm using. Obviously I've got a problem with actually telling you what colours I'm using today. Perhaps my brain just isn't working. I mean, I've never had much of a brain anyway, but it's probably not working as well today. No idea why. But we're just adding touches of that grey just around our Abutilon. Now, if you touch a little bit of that blue on your Abutilon flower, it will drag that out. So that's why I say to you, have a bit of kitchen roll, and you can just use a little bit of a drier brush, but just make sure that the darkest of the grey goes to the edge, right where the floral is. So right here at the edge. Again, you can just turn your card and add that darkest grey closest to the Abutilon. And as you move away from the Abutilon, you can then just spread that colour out. And I'm just using the piece of white card just so that I don't touch areas I don't need to touch. And if you touch your florals and a little bit of blue comes out, that doesn't matter. You're just sort of adding a little bit of the grey because it'll just add some shading around your Abutilons. And what you can do is just sort of, let's grab a little bit more water, just sort of drag out so that it's sort of comes out, blends out to almost nothing. And then what I'm going to do is pick up some of the neat colour, and you just want to make sure that the strongest of the colour is around the Abutilon, so that the darkness really is around the edge of that Abutilon. So this time you're not using your Inktense pencil to add shading, you're using your grey ink. And it's just about building up the depth of colour around these Abutilons. And just take your time just to add a little bit of that grey, just so those Abutylons, let me show you this, just so the Abutylons stand out a little bit more with the shading. We haven't finished yet. Now I'm trying to avoid drying the card so that we don't get the heat tool out. Let's take this card and just test my gel pen, just so that we can add a few little touch. Sometimes I leave the birds completely black, but it's entirely up to you what you want to do. So then I'm just going to, oh, I know what I wanted to do. Where's my, so I'm going to just take a Prismacolor pencil and just add a little bit more darkness at the top of here. This is Lime Peel, PC1005. I actually called it Imperial in one of my workshops because I couldn't read it. So I had to get a magnifying glass just to see what it said. So just adding a little bit more darkness to that. And really, you need to let this dry before you sort of try and add some little touches of the white. And it's good if you can let a little bit of the grey dry, because then we can add another layer to our design, and just adding a little touch of white here and there just brings a little bit of life to your design. And it does look better when you've got a few just coming off the edge of the page. It just works nicely. Just let me show you what we have at the moment, so you can see those. So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to, oh, got my case in the way. So we don't want to add any more grey yet, just not yet. And I'm going to use my anti-static bag. So let's take the anti-static bag, and we're using that anti-static bag because I've not dried this card. I'm trying to get away with not drying it. So that's the anti-static bag, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of embossing. I'm just using the card, hopefully, with no copier paper. There's no room on my desk. Let's move those all out of the way. And I'm using TE11 background elements because, I mean, this stamp is so well used. So I'm just taking a little bit of my Versamark watermark stamp pad, and I'm going to add little touches of white, which you can't see and I can't see. So we'll just sprinkle the embossing powder. I can see that now. And then I'm not even going to tip that back in at the moment. Let's take a little bit more because I can see where it is. Obviously it'll be more prominent for you shortly when I show the background. So again, we'll add our embossing powder. just giving that a little bit of a flick, just to get rid of any stray bits of embossing powder. I haven't plugged my heat tool in, but what's new? And by using my anti-static bag, I'm making sure that I've got more chance of not having that embossing powder everywhere. She says confidently. So we'll just grab our heat tool. And we'll allow that heat tool just to heat up. So I didn't avoid not using the heat tool, of course not, because I'm using the embossing powder. Oh dear, no hope really. So I'm just heating that up, just so that there's less time on the card. Let's make sure. Yes, that's nice. So we'll just add the heat just to heat our embossing powder. And I'm just lifting it slightly, mainly because it's so bright in here today, and with it being on very pale background, it's very difficult to see that changing. There we go. So as soon as that changes, I'm just moving over. Now I've got an itchy nose. I like to keep you informed in the details. There we go. And then we'll just bend that just slightly. And you can see the embossing, which will, I love how it's gone over the, come on camera, over the floral, just so you can see that. And now, when we add a little bit more grey, it will show up a little bit more. So we'll take our hickory smoke once again, and we'll just add a little bit more colour now. So you are adding another layer. So it's just like you would if you had your pencils, you know, like we add layers with pencils, with blending our inks. It's no different than that. You're building up the depth of that colour, and that embossing will resist any of our ink. Just bring that down to the beard. So it will resist the embossing that we've added. Let's come round here. And now you're just adding a little bit more depth to the edges of the florals, just so that one, the embossing becomes more prominent, and also the flowers pop a little bit more as well, which is quite nice. So we should see those pop a little bit more, because we're adding a second layer of our hickory smoke. So it's really coming to life now. I always find this quite therapeutic, doing this bit. Running out of water, but I actually enjoy this bit where you can see straight away that it comes to life, just with a little bit more darkness. And you can just blend this out. And you don't worry if, so now it's very watered down, if you touch your florals slightly and a little bit of the green just comes out or seeps out, because it just adds to the effect. So I'm just adding a little bit of touches of grey, not much, just around my little bird a little bit as well. There we go. It just stands out so much more. Let me show you. Just stands out a little bit more with those florals. Really does stand out a little bit more. So then go back to your hickory smoke so that it's neat colour. Pick up a little touch and just on the little, just on the edge there, just make it a little tad darker, just so it pops a little bit more. So I'm using the neat ink now and just making it a little bit darker, just under, there we go. And I think it's worth it. So what I'm going to do now, let's move this out of the way. We're then going to take this lighter green and I'm going to scribble this on here. I'm then going to add a spritz of water and I'm then going to pick this up and just add some of that, that's it, to the background. And what will happen is the card still has moisture in it from the grey and it just all softens out just beautifully. I'm not going to dry that, I want to let it sort of flatten out, and it just works so nicely with the little touch of that limey colour in the background. So I'm then going to, which we want the Timeless Sentiment again, which is on the Clematis stamp set. And I've picked up Clematis or Climber. Yep, that is not what I want Timeless. And as you can see, I've got the ink all over me. We'll just take our black ink, our Nocturne ink, like so. And let's add that here. And I just love how, you know, I often say all the stamps work together, but they really do. Let's cut out our sentiment or word, not exactly a sentiment. So let's cut out our word. And sometimes all you need is a small word. Just as your embellishment piece. I'm going to use this card to work on, and I'm going to use my Posca pen just to add a faux black mat, like so. There we go. Move that out of the way. Now what I'm going to do just with the heat tool is dry this a little bit from the reverse, so it's a little bit gentler, because I don't want to affect that embossing, but just add a little bit of heat just so that I'm not working soaking wet with the green, that's much better. It's dried a little bit now. I'm then going to add my Timeless Sentiment. Like so. And this would post quite cheaply because there's not too much dimension. There we go. Just give that a few seconds just to dry, and whilst we do that, let's just clean this brush so that when I add the shading we don't add the green, which we definitely don't want. Take a little bit of that off. And my pencil's getting so small now. I have got another one, but it's getting harder and harder to actually see where it is. Then just blend so that you've got a little bit of shading, and you can just, that's it. And just so you can see, lift that up so it is completely flat apart from the word. And then let's grab excuse me, TE12 Shadowed Elements that's got my little bird on there. Let's grab that, and our Nocturne ink. And you see me tilt it there, mainly because I was just checking I'll explain something in a minute. I can't decide there. So like how I couldn't decide where it's going. And sometimes as well, when your card is curling a little bit, it makes it a little bit difficult to stamp. So that's why it's great if you can let it just dry naturally. Put the acetate on there. No, that's the wrong acetate to the wrong stamp. Oh dear me, that's the acetate to the other one. And then let's take, so sometimes I just leave that bird black, other times I will add a touch of white. It all depends how I feel. You can come in and just, because it's now drier, it's that, you know, the card's not as wet as it was, these touches of white just take a little bit better on the card, so it works a little bit better. We're now going to add our splatters. You can put a little piece of card if you wish just over your Timeless, just so that you don't hit that word. But it is nice to have a few splatters just on the sort of grey area. And then I've got a black mat, 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, because it just pops nicely against the black mat. It works quite nicely. Now you would let it dry a little bit longer than I'm doing. And I was just shaking the glue there because I've got my fan on, and sometimes if I leave the lid off stupidly, obviously it causes the point to clog a little bit. Now I'm just going to lift this up, mainly because it's a little bit easier, and you can rub it from the back, but I just like to give it time just to, can you see it working against me? So I'm just, that's why I don't turn it over too soon, because I just want to spend a few minutes just until that tonic glue, and it's now grabbing. Once it starts to grab, we're okay. So then you can turn it over, make sure that it's sticking in the centre, and then you don't add any of your paw prints to your card. There we go. And then let's just add a few little splatters to each corner of the black, just so it's part of the card, but then don't go and put your fingers on it. Let's just clean that up. You need to sort of give that a couple of seconds, so I'll just place that against the 5 by 7 card, and I won't adhere it until those splatters are dry, just so you can see that. And then we'll just create an insert for this card. So I've got another piece of card that's 4.5 by 6.5. That can be drying then. We'll take the timeless wording, and then we'll add, so this is going to be our insert to our card. Let's turn that fan off. And we'll just add just to the bottom corner here. Then we'll take our little Abutolon and our Nocturne ink, and we'll add this here. So it's just a suggestion of what's on the front of the card, just being added to the inside. Now, because this is a permanent ink pad, I can use my pens that are reactive to water and it won't be affected. No, you want the green first. And of course, now my hands are all wet. So we'll just take the green, and it's so easy to colour. Again, because that pen is wet, it blends beautifully. Again, I can blend with water if I wish. So using the same colours that we used on the front of the card. Again, blending pen to pen. And take a little bit of that colour, just with a wash of the blue. and then you can just blend that out to nothing. Clean our brush. And if you're sending a card to somebody special, it's lovely just to add a little insert, or maybe add a touch to an envelope. It works really nicely. And obviously I didn't want to add any colour to the bud for some strange reason. There we go. A little bit of green at the top. And then let me just, there we go, let's rinse that. Take off most of the water, and then we'll just come in and add a little bit of shading. Just as a suggestion of what's on the front cover of our card. Preferably without the bits of hair. So just adding a little bit of the suggestion that's on the front. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, just a suggestion of what's on there. Now that will still be wet, so let's try and, so we'll just add some little splatters of white. Let's just clean up our area again. Place that on one side, and let's bring in our card. Let's try and lean it on something. So now that is dry, we'll add that to our card blank. So we've got a 5 by 7 inch card blank. We're just going to add this to our card, and now I don't have to worry because the splatters on the corners are dry. And then we'll just, let's move the stamps so that we don't get any black marks on there. We'll then add our little insert, which again measures 4.5 by 6.5, just like the piece that we worked on. We'll just place this onto the inside of the card. There we go. And just leave that open for a few moments just while that dries. But then you've got your card on the front cover. Just love that. And you can see the touches of white. And if you lift your card, you've then got your little insert. The only thing we need to do is when this insert's fully dry, you just need to add a few little touches of that white because it finishes it off beautifully. So you've got a beautiful insert that finishes off your beautiful card. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Can't wait to see your interpretation. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.